Hey, welcome, fellow Phoenixes, to the Spiritual Phoenix Podcast, where we make a daily offering to the divine by putting our past on the pyre, searching the smoke for spirituality, turning the ashes into art, adapting isolation into connection, and manifesting mental wellness. I'm your host, Ross Cessna, and together we are the Spiritual Phoenix. The intent of this show isn't to tell you what to think, but to get you to think and originally articulate yourself in a way that is uplifting. We are the artists of our lives, and today is a blank canvas. Let's collectively create a better tomorrow. And right now, I'd like to take a moment and focus on what we are grateful for today. So today, I'm really just grateful to be in the space that I'm in. Like, obviously, things aren't perfect because they'll never be. But overall, I'm relatively hopeful. I'm proud of the progress I've made in kind of restoring my own sense of self, in rebuilding myself as a man. And I don't mean to take full credit for that. Obviously, they say it takes a community to raise a child. So it's largely due to the community of people that I'm involved in. And through prayer and meditation and all of these things that have helped me get to this state that I'm in. And that being said, obviously, there's still more room for growth, but it's okay to appreciate where I'm at. And I want to get into today's topic now. So last week, I did the desecration of the sacred feminine. And I figured I would do what I did when I originally talked about the divine feminine. I followed it up with an episode on the masculine. And that episode was kind of abrasive, but it was very cathartic for me as well. This is going to be in a different lens somewhat. And this is going to be talking about kind of how to rebuild that divine masculine. Because there's a lot of stuff talking about toxic masculinity, and there's a lot of opinions put out there about what a man should be or should do and all of this stuff, but a lot of it's not being voiced by men. And there's not a lot of real movement in this area, I feel like. And by no means do I claim to be an authority on any of this. I try to make it clear that the only thing I'm an authority on is my own experience, and even that's subject to revision at times. So some of the things that I've really learned about being a man in the past couple years, or maybe even just since I recorded that episode about a year and a half ago, I think that the main thing about it is integrity, which is the harmony of your words and your actions. And I think that there's very little of that in our culture. I think a key part of integrity overall as well is honesty. And not just honesty, cash register honesty, as they talk about, where you're honest and you get rewarded for it, but honesty in the sense of bringing up those uncomfortable truths of yourself and other people as well. The people that I've valued most in my life, or value most in my life, are the ones that I can have authentic conversations with, where they feel that they can tell me the truth and they're not afraid of pissing me off, I guess. And there's somebody in the fellowship that I'm in who says, I'm not worried about your feelings getting hurt. I'm trying to save your life. And I understand that it's not always to that extreme. But largely, you could tell somebody something in the kindest way possible, and they could still be hurt by it because of their own self-work and their own ability to look at themselves in a genuine way. So that honesty, I guess I would say, blended with compassion, is essential. And the reality is, all truth isn't kind. It's simply not. And some of I'm trying to resolve that. All truth isn't kind, but if you can take some of the unpleasant truths and utilize them, you can see the kindness in it, because it's an attempt to guide you back to a better path. Some of the other things that I've really found about the sacred masculine is about learning to instill discipline to yourself. Disciplining others is pointless. And I heard somebody talk about this at one point. Culturally, we have kind of a negative opinion about discipline. But if you really think about it, it's because of we view discipline almost as punishment or this rigidness. If you kind of give it a different sense of life, with discipline being more focused on bringing out the best in you, of holding yourself accountable, of belief in your ability. Like, it doesn't have to be such an unpleasant set of circumstances. So we've talked about integrity, which is having all the pieces of your life kind of aligned and walking your talk and talking about your walk, I guess. We have honesty, we have discipline, and I would think that empathy is a big part of empathy/compassion is a big part of embodying the sacred masculine or the divine masculine essence. And if you really look at the things that I'm talking about and you look at our culture, most of those things are devoid from males in our culture, with maybe the exception of discipline. But it's also the discipline of others, and it's also discipline in a more unpleasant, less self-supporting way. But that empathy and compassion is crucial, because that's what helps build a quote unquote tribe, or helps you have community. And that's really what helps you integrate more with society and not end up this xenophobic recluse. And I say that to say this, like, learning how to live with other people is one of the most difficult things for me. It's one of the areas that I still struggle with. I have a lot of compassion and empathy for certain people, but I want them to do it over there. Like, I don't want them up in my bubble. And it really is something that I have to work on. But I actually shared something with a friend on Facebook. It was this video from Brene Brown that was making its rounds 2 years ago or so. And it's about the difference between empathy and sympathy. And empathy is the ability to sit down and say, I've been there, rather than saying, I feel bad for you. And I think that that's one of the main things that's missing from men in our culture, because men have become so detached from their emotions because of this cultural ideal that men need to be kind of emotionally numb, I guess is the way that I would put it. Empathy is difficult for most men. And I think that that's something that really needs to be resolved overall. And this next area that I'm going to talk about, I might not word it appropriately because I'm still learning and growing. But I think it's something that needs to be looked at. And I'm kind of putting this disclaimer out there that I might not navigate it perfectly, because I haven't really heard many people talk about this in a healthy way. But in some ways, the way that men are going about resolving toxic masculinity is to the other extreme, where it's over incorporating feminine elements to the masculine energy. And using myself as an example, like when I was smoking pot all the time, I don't smoke at all anymore, but completely clean of all substances. But when I was smoking pot all the time, which is like a feminine energy, and a lot of men in that pot smoking circle fall into this feminine energy. It was really about the long hair, very passive aggressive. To see how I did that. Nice guy syndrome and all of this stuff. And I think that that's one of the dangers of misrepresenting the masculine energy, is that it falls into a lot of toxic traits. So the feminine is more about receptivity and passivity in Eastern culture, feminine energy in general. And when men embody too much of that to an extent, they're just as out of balance if they're too much of the masculine energy, which is this driving force. So the resolution for that really is trying to achieve this equilibrium, this sacred union. And when I originally did the episode on the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine, I talked about doing an episode on the sacred union. And I said that they needed some time, those energies needed some time on a honeymoon. And I still think that it needs some time for me to really get to a place to where they're more balanced. I've definitely found a way to temper kind of that overly passive element of the feminine energy. And I'm learning to temper down the fieriness of the yang energy, I guess. That's something that somebody told me at one point, and I was really kind of floored by it, but that I have too much yang, because I've always perceived myself as overly effeminate. But then when I really look at it, that's kind of the natural equilibrium of things. When you emphasize too much of one energy, let me say, maybe it's not the natural, maybe it's just the way that certain people like myself or others go about it. But when you, or when I should say, am trying to correct a behavior, typically I go to the other extreme, and then it's kind of like this slowly fluctuating between that till I find a more central point. And as I've been going through all of this stuff, I've been finding a more and more, more and more centralized point. And I think that that's the key thing about embodying the sacred masculine and getting out of the toxic sides of both of the poles. Because on one, you're trampling over people. On the other, you're being trampled on by people. But they both have their caustic elements. And when you can learn to be more centralized in who you are, there's a benefit to it. And I want to say this too, I'm not talking about the masculine energy specifically to men. And I don't think that you need to be a specific gender to identify with a certain energy more so than the other. Like, this is all based upon my own experience, which is learning to bring out more of the masculine so I can feel more balanced within myself, and finding the harmony within that. But if you personally feel like you need to have more feminine energy, because that's where you're more refined at, that's okay. I think that people have different paths to walk, I guess. Mine is just middle path, pretty much straight down the line, which is not the easiest thing to accomplish. And that being said, women can also exhibit too much male energy in a sense where they will trample over people. I feel at this point that I've really discussed all of this in a healthy and productive way, which is more so, as to bring out the male energy, we need to focus more on integrity as a culture. We need to focus more on honesty as a culture. We need to focus more on discipline and healthy discipline and the rewards of discipline as a culture. empathy and compassion. And I forget the other point that I made. I think I just kind of went off on a tangent. Um, but yeah, like I do have hope for other people, in getting to bring this about. And it's something that I wish I could find more in my local circle, like a strong group of supportive, spiritually minded men. But it'll happen, when it's supposed to. And this whole time in my life right now is about refining what I mean to me, what I want out of life, and what I'm willing to do to achieve, or what I'm willing to do, yeah, to achieve what I want. Um, yeah. So with that, I love, respect, and appreciate all of you. I got some things percolating, which I'll be releasing soon. And I just want to throw this out there. I've been going back to this more simplistic method of recording the podcast because I've been so overwhelmed with things, and I want to accomplish some stuff prior to kind of reconceptualizing this and doing a bigger drive towards higher production value. So I'm consciously regressing at this point in the production value. And that may not make sense to some people, but it is what it is. So with that, I love, respect, and appreciate all of you. Peace.